Imani Carter was 33 years old when she finally followed her husband down the same quiet highway he'd driven alone every spring for 8 years. Damon always said the same thing. His mother didn't like crowds, didn't like surprises, didn't like her. Imani had believed it long enough to stop asking. This year, she didn't ask. She just followed, 2 cars behind, watching him take an exit she didn't recognize, into a neighborhood she'd never seen, toward a house she didn't know existed. There was no nursing home, no frail woman waiting by a window. There was a swing set, a woman opening the front door before he even knocked, and 2 children running across the lawn screaming the word "Daddy" loud enough that Imani heard it through her closed window. Damon didn't look nervous walking up that driveway. He looked like a man arriving home. What he didn't know was that Imani had already photographed the license plate, the house number, the woman's face. And she wasn't planning to confront anyone. Not yet. Sitting in her car at the end of that street, engine off, hands steady, Imani made a decision that would end his entire carefully built life. He had no idea it had already begun. Before we dive in, comment where you're watching from today, and if stories like this speak to you, hit subscribe, because tomorrow's story is even more intense. The seating chart wasn't going to fix itself. Imani Carter leaned over her desk, a red pen in one hand and a highlighter in the other, studying the printed grid like it owed her money. Table 7 was the problem. It was always Table 7. The bride's aunt and the groom's college roommate had history, the bad kind, and whoever sat them within eyeshot of each other was asking for a scene before the salad course arrived. She moved the aunt to Table 4, shifted the roommate to Table 9, stepped back and looked at the whole thing again. Better. Clean. Done. She capped the highlighter, set it down, and reached for her coffee. It had gone cold an hour ago, but she drank it anyway. Her home office was her favorite room in the house. Walls painted a deep, warm terracotta, shelves lined with color-coded binders, a corkboard covered in vendor cards and sticky notes and fabric swatches pinned in neat rows. 3 years ago, she had converted the spare bedroom into this space, and it had quietly become the room where she felt most like herself. Carter Events had grown from a part-time side project into a firm with 2 full-time staff, 6 rotating contractors, and a wait list that stretched 4 months out. Every inch of this office was proof of that. She was 33 years old. She had built something real. She was still looking at the seating chart when she heard Damon's footsteps on the stairs, that familiar, easy rhythm, unhurried, like he had all the time in the world. He appeared in the doorway looking exactly the way he always did on a Friday afternoon, relaxed, comfortable in his own skin. He had his phone in one hand and a small glass of water in the other, and he leaned against the doorframe like he'd been posing for a lifestyle magazine. "Hey," he said. "Hey." She didn't look up from the chart. "You almost done in here?" "Almost." He stepped into the room, came around the side of the desk, and pressed a kiss to the top of her head. She felt him glance at the paper in front of her, not really reading it, just acknowledging it existed. "Looks complicated," he said. "It's not." She moved one more name, a small correction she'd been meaning to make. "What's up?" He took a sip of water, set the glass down on the edge of her desk, right next to her coaster, which was there specifically for that purpose, which he did not use. A small thing. She noticed it the way she noticed everything. "So I'm going to head out Sunday morning," he said. "Probably be back Tuesday night, maybe Wednesday." She looked up at him then. She already knew what he was going to say. She knew it the same way she knew the layout of every room in this house, the same way she knew the aunt at Table 7 would absolutely start something if given the chance. "Mom's not doing great," Damon said. His voice was soft, a little heavy, weighted with just the right amount of concern. "She's been having a rough couple of weeks. I want to go check on her." Imani nodded slowly. "Is she okay?" "She'll be fine. You know how she gets in the spring." He shrugged, one shoulder. It's better if I go alone. She gets overwhelmed with too many people around. Too many people. That had always been the phrase he used, and it had always been a careful way of saying what he really meant, which was that she was not welcome. Not in a cruel way, never in a cruel way. It was always framed as Patrice's preference, Patrice's limitations, Patrice's fragile nerves. Imani had never met the woman. 8 years of marriage, and she had never once been in the same room as her mother-in-law. No holidays together, no calls on Mother's Day, not a single photograph of Patrice anywhere in the house, not on the mantel, not on the bookshelf, not tucked into any corner Imani had ever found. She had asked once, early in the marriage, why there were no pictures. "Mom doesn't like having her photo taken," Damon had said, and he had smiled at her like the question was sweet and small, and she had let it go. She had let a lot of things go. "Okay," she said now. "Drive safe." He smiled, kissed her cheek this time, picked up his water glass and walked back toward the door. "I'm going to order Thai tonight. You want the usual?" "Sure." He disappeared down the hallway, and she turned back to the seating chart, and the room was quiet again. That evening, while Damon watched TV in the other room, Imani sat at the kitchen counter with her laptop open, working through the monthly household bills. She moved through them automatically. Electric, internet, car insurance, the joint credit card. She was almost finished when she stopped. There was a hotel charge she didn't recognize. A place called the Millbrook Inn, dated 3 weeks ago. She didn't know any Millbrook. She pulled up a search window and typed it in. The results came back in seconds. Millbrook was 2 hours north of their house. It was also 2 hours in the complete opposite direction from the retirement community where Patrice supposedly lived. Her hand stilled on the mouse. She opened Damon's shared cloud calendar out of habit. They'd synced them 2 years ago for scheduling purposes. And there it was. That weekend had been labeled Work Trip, Hargrove Account. She sat with that for a moment. Then, almost without meaning to, she clicked over to his recent call log, the shared phone plan they'd been on for 6 years. Her eyes moved down the list until they caught on a name she didn't recognize. Yo. No last name, just those 2 letters. The number had been called 14 times in the past 30 days. Imani stared at the screen. The refrigerator hummed. From the living room, she could hear the faint sound of the television, Damon laughing at something. She did not move. She did not call out to him. She did not close the laptop. She sat there in the quiet kitchen and stared at the name Yo, and felt something cold and very still settle into the center of her chest. Not panic, not yet, but the very first edge of a question she already suspected she didn't want answered. She was not going to ask him about it. Not tonight. Imani called Dana at 7 in the morning, not because she was falling apart, because she wasn't, and she needed someone who would understand the difference. Dana picked up on the second ring, voice still thick with sleep. "It's Saturday, Imani." "I know. Come over." A pause, then, "How bad?" "Come over." Dana arrived 40 minutes later with 2 cups of coffee from the place on Elm Street and her reading glasses pushed up on her forehead, which meant she had come prepared to look at something carefully. That was the thing about Dana Whitfield. She showed up sharp even when she hadn't fully woken up yet. Imani had the laptop open on the kitchen counter. She didn't say anything. She just turned the screen around. Dana set down both cups, put her glasses on, and leaned in. She looked at the hotel charge. She looked at the call log. She looked at the name Yo and its 14 entries. And she straightened up slowly and picked her coffee back up. "How long has this contact been in the log?" she asked. "As far back as I can see. At least a year, maybe more." Dana nodded. She didn't say, "Oh my God," or "I'm so sorry," or any of the other things a person might say standing in a kitchen at 7:30 on a Saturday morning looking at something like this. She just nodded, quiet and steady, and Imani felt some of the tightness in her shoulders ease slightly. He leaves Sunday, Imani said. For his mother's. Uh-huh. I want to follow him. Dana looked at her over the rim of her cup. Okay. I need a second car. If I trail him in mine and he checks his mirrors, it's over. He knows my car. You can take my Civic. Dana said it the same way she might offer a spare umbrella. No drama, no hesitation. What else? Imani slid a notepad across the counter. She had been up since 5. The list was already written. Dana read it. A prepaid phone with GPS tracking capability. A camera with a decent zoom lens. Her firm had one for site documentation. A clean route mapped from their house to wherever Damon ended up. Dana's name on nothing that touched Damon's world. You've been awake all night, Dana said. Most of it. And you're not going to confront him before he leaves. No. Dana looked at her carefully. Why not? Because if I confront him now, I get his version of whatever this is, and his version won't be the truth. Imani picked up her own coffee. I want the truth. Dana was quiet for a moment. Then she nodded once, firmly, the way she did when a decision had been made and the discussion was over. Tell me what day you need me ready. Imani bought the prepaid phone that same afternoon, paying cash at a pharmacy 2 towns over. She set it up in the car before she drove home, tucking it into the small zippered compartment inside her work bag, where she kept extra business cards and a backup charger. It sat there for the next 4 days, waiting. She went home and made dinner. She asked Damon how his week had been. She laughed at something he said. She did not look at his phone when it buzzed on the coffee table, even though part of her cataloged the way he tilted the screen just slightly away from her before reading it. Small things. She noticed them all. She filed them away without reacting to a single one. Sunday morning came, gray and cool, the sky the color of old dishwater. Damon kissed her at the door, his travel bag slung over one shoulder. I'll call you when I get there, he said. Okay, she smiled. Tell Patrice I hope she feels better. He smiled back. Will do. She watched his car pull out of the driveway. She counted to 60. Then she picked up her phone and typed one word to Dana. Now. Dana's Civic was already idling 2 blocks east. Imani climbed in, settled her bag on her lap, and checked the prepaid phone. The small dot on the GPS screen was moving steadily north. He's on Route 9, she said. Dana pulled out without a word and followed at a comfortable distance, 3 cars back, neither rushing nor falling behind. They drove for nearly 2 hours. The highway gave way to a 2-lane road, and the 2-lane road gave way to a neighborhood. Quiet streets, mature trees, houses with tidy lawns and basketball hoops at the end of driveways. Damon's car slowed. Dana slowed too, pulling to the curb half a block back. Imani raised the camera. Damon turned into the driveway of a well-kept white house with black shutters and a wooden swing set in the backyard, visible from the street. He hadn't even finished cutting the engine before the front door opened. The woman was tall, warm-skinned, pretty in an easy, unguarded way. She stepped off the porch and walked straight to him, and when he got out of the car, she kissed him. Not a greeting, not a peck. The kind of kiss that came from years of practice. Then the children came, 2 of them. A boy and a smaller girl, both running flat out across the lawn in their socks, arms wide. Daddy! The word hit the air like something physical. Imani pressed the shutter button once, twice, 5 times. The camera was quiet. Her hands were steady. She took 11 photographs in total. Then she lowered the camera, placed it carefully in her bag, and looked straight ahead through the windshield. Drive, she said. Dana drove. The car sat parked at the curb, 2 houses down from her own. Imani had been sitting in it for 20 minutes. The street was quiet. A neighbor's sprinkler ticked in a slow arc across the lawn. A dog barked once, then stopped. The evening light had turned gold and thin, the kind that made everything look softer than it was. She looked at the photos on her phone, 11 of them. She went through them slowly, one by one, the way she reviewed a vendor contract. Not fast, not emotionally, but looking at each detail until she understood exactly what she was seeing. The White House with the black shutters, the well-kept yard, the swing set with 2 swings, both worn smooth on the seats from regular use. Damon stepping out of the car. The woman moving toward him like she had done it 1,000 times before, because she probably had. The children in their socks on the grass, arms open wide. Daddy. Imani stopped on that photo for a long moment. The boy was maybe 9, the girl younger, 6, maybe 7, old enough to run fast, old enough to know his face the way children know the face of someone they have always depended on. She pressed her thumb and forefinger against the bridge of her nose and breathed. Not grief. Not yet. Something colder than grief, and more useful. How long? That was the question that mattered most right now. Not why, not how could you. Those were questions with answers that wouldn't help her. But how long? That had a number attached to it. A number meant documents, records, a paper trail that didn't lie the way people lied. She needed to know what she was dealing with before she said a single word to him. She locked the phone, dropped it in her bag, and got out of the car. Damon came home at 7:30, travel bag over his shoulder, smelling faintly of someone else's laundry detergent. He dropped his keys in the ceramic dish by the door, the same dish he had dropped them in for 8 years, and smiled when he saw her in the kitchen. "Hey." He crossed the room and hugged her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. "Missed you." "Missed you too." She kept stirring the pot on the stove. Her voice was even, her hands were steady. "How was the drive back?" "Long. Traffic on Route 9 was rough." He reached past her and stole a piece of carrot from the cutting board. "How was your weekend?" "Quiet, caught up on invoices." She turned and looked at him directly, the way she always had. "How's Patrice feeling?" Something moved through his eyes, quick, almost invisible. "Better," he said. "A little tired, but better." "Good," she smiled. "I'm glad." He nodded and disappeared upstairs to unpack, and Imani turned back to the stove. She stood there and let the steam rise into her face and did not feel a single thing that she allowed herself to show. She did not sleep much that night, but she was dressed and out the door by 8 the next morning, before Damon had finished his coffee. "Early client?" he called from the kitchen. "Site walkthrough," she called back. "Don't wait up for lunch." She drove across town with both hands on the wheel and the radio off. Gregory Niles kept his office on the 4th floor of a building that smelled like wood polish and old carpet, the kind of building that had been there long enough to feel permanent. His name was on the door in clean gold letters. Gregory Niles, Family Law. He looked up from his desk when she walked in, and his expression shifted, not with alarm, but with the particular attention of someone who knew her well enough to read her correctly. "Imani." He stood. "Sit down." She sat. She placed her phone on the desk, already open to the first photograph, and slid it toward him. He looked at it. He looked at all 11 of them, slowly, without speaking. His jaw tightened once on the 7th photo, the one of the children, but he kept his face composed. When he set the phone down, he folded his hands on the desk and looked at her. "Tell me what you know," he said. She told him. All of it. The hotel charge, the contact name, the 2-hour drive, the house, the woman, the children's voices in the open air. Gregory listened without interrupting. When she finished, the office was very quiet. "I haven't said anything to him," she said. "I'm not going to, not yet. I need to know how long this has been happening before I do anything. I need records." Documentation, something he can't talk his way out of. Gregory held her gaze for a long moment. "This is going to take patience," he said. "Weeks, possibly more. Can you go home every night and act like everything is normal?" "I already did it last night." Something in his expression shifted slightly. Respect, maybe. He reached into his desk drawer and pulled out a manila folder and a pen. He wrote her name on the tab in clean block letters. Carter, Imani. "Then let's get started," he said. The folder Gregory slid across the desk was thin but heavy in the way that mattered. Not many pages, but the kind of pages that settled things. Imani picked it up and opened it. The top sheet was a property record, official, county-stamped, printed in that dull gray font that government documents always used. She had read enough contracts in her work to move through the legal language quickly, scanning past the formal sections until she found what she needed. Her eyes stopped. She read the line twice. Then she set the folder down flat on the desk and looked at Gregory. 11 years, she said. 11 years. He leaned back in his chair, hands laced together across his chest. The house on Cartwell Drive has been in Damon's name since March of 2013. Not a rental, not a lease. Deeded property, property taxes paid consistently, utility accounts in his name the entire time. Imani did the math without speaking. She always did math without speaking. She and Damon had gotten married in 2016. They had dated for a year before that, so they met in 2015, which meant the house had already existed for 2 years before Damon ever took her to dinner for the first time. 2 years before he ever said her name with that particular warmth in his voice that she had believed was only for her. The swing set, the worn, smooth seats. Those children hadn't worn those swings smooth in a year or two. That kind of wear took time. That took years of small hands gripping the same chains, years of pushing off from the same patch of dirt. "The children," she said. "The boy. Mason. What's his age?" 9. Gregory's voice was careful and even. "The girl, Aaliyah, is 6. 9 years old. Imani sat with that quietly. Damon had held her hand at a dinner party 7 years ago and told her she was the most grounded person he had ever met. She remembered the exact table, the exact candles. She had pressed that memory flat inside herself like something to keep. He had said it while that boy was already 2 years old somewhere else. "Tell me about the contact name," she said. "Yo," Gregory nodded, opening a second page in the folder. "Yolanda Pierce, age 34. She and Damon have been connected to that property address since it was purchased. Her name isn't on the deed, but it shows up consistently in utility account records as a secondary contact. She has lived there continuously." Continuously. The words sat in the room like a stone. "He told you he visits his mother every spring," Gregory said. He wasn't asking. He was laying the timeline down, piece by piece, the way a careful man did when the picture was ugly enough to need preparation. "I pulled Damon's personal calendar records, the ones subpoenaed as part of background documentation." He paused. The first logged spring visit listed under the note, "Mom, Patrice," was March 2013. The same month. The same month the house was purchased. The same month Yolanda Pierce became a secondary name on a utility account. The same month Damon Carter apparently decided he needed a cover story clean enough to use indefinitely. Imani felt something shift inside her chest. Not breaking, something older than breaking. The feeling of a foundation you'd built your life on suddenly being measured, and the measurements coming back wrong. She had spent 8 years believing that Patrice Carter simply didn't like her. That she was too modern, too independent, too something that Damon's elderly mother couldn't warm to. She had absorbed that explanation quietly, the way she absorbed most things that felt like her own failing. She had worked harder, smiled more, sent cards at Christmas that were never acknowledged, told herself that some family wounds were old and not personal. It had always been personal. It had just never been about her at all. "He made it up," she said. Her voice was steady. "The whole ritual. He made it up from the beginning." "The dates line up to within the same month," Gregory said. "He didn't adapt the cover story later to explain absences. He built it at the same time he built the second household. Both things started together." The room was very quiet. Outside, a car passed slowly on the street below. Someone laughed on the sidewalk, light and careless, the sound drifting up and then gone. Imani closed the folder. She pressed her palm flat against its cover for a moment, feeling the paper under her hand. "Yolanda," she said finally, "what does she know? About me? About any of this?" "That's what I'd want to confirm next," Gregory said, "before you decide anything." She nodded slowly. "Then that's what we do next." She straightened in her chair and looked at him directly. "I want to know exactly what Yolanda Pierce has been told, and I want the household finances. Both households. Every account he's touched that feeds that house." She pulled her bag from the floor and set it on her lap. "Can you get that?" "Give me a week," he said. "You have one," she said. She stood up, smoothed the front of her blazer with one hand, and picked up her bag. "Keep digging," she said. "I'll be in touch." The investigator's name was Renata Solis. Gregory had mentioned her in passing. Steady, discreet, experienced, and Imani had not asked for details. She did not need to know how the information arrived. She only needed it to be accurate. It arrived on a Thursday morning, in a plain envelope left with Gregory's receptionist. Gregory scanned the pages and sent them to Imani's secure email by noon with a single line of text. "Read when you're alone. Call me after." Imani waited until evening. She made herself eat first. A real meal. Rice, roasted vegetables, a glass of water, sitting at the kitchen table while the late sun cut through the window and made long orange shapes across the floor. Damon was traveling for work, a real work trip this time, she assumed, though she had stopped trusting her assumptions weeks ago. The house was quiet in a way she used to love and now found too big. When she finished eating, she cleared her plate, wiped down the table, and set her laptop in front of her. She opened the email. She clicked the attachment. She read. Renata's notes were clean and direct, no dramatic language. Just facts listed in order, the way someone who had done this work for a long time learned to do it. Spare, precise, nothing extra. Yolanda Pierce, age 34, elementary school art teacher, no criminal record, no civil judgments, owned one car, a used silver sedan registered to the Cartwell Drive address, no credit cards with significant debt, no travel history outside of short regional trips, mostly school-related. Stable. Rooted. She was not a woman who went anywhere much. Then the harder part. Based on social media activity, private accounts but with enough visible overlap to piece together, and a brief recorded conversation Renata had conducted while posing as a neighbor borrowing a cup of something ordinary, Yolanda had provided a version of her life unprompted, the way warm and trusting people sometimes did. Imani read the quoted section slowly. Subject spoke openly about partner's frequent travel for work in regional sales. Subject referenced partner's difficult past, specifically that he lost his first wife a few years before they met, and that it had taken him a long time to open up again. Subject gave no indication of awareness of a living spouse. Tone was sympathetic toward partner, protective. Imani sat back in her chair. She read the paragraph again. Lost his first wife. Damon had killed her off. Not dramatically, not with any detail Yolanda had felt the need to share, just quietly erased her, filed Imani Carter away under gone, so that the woman raising his children would never think to look. For a long moment, Imani did not move. The refrigerator hummed, a dog barked somewhere down the block. The orange light on the floor had faded while she was reading, and now the kitchen was settling into the gray-blue of early evening. She thought about Yolanda opening her front door with a kiss, that easy, unbothered warmth, the way a woman moved when she felt safe in her own home, safe in her own story. Yolanda was not safe. She just didn't know it yet. She was standing in the same lie Imani had been standing in for 8 years, and she had no idea the floor wasn't real. She was teaching children to paint in the mornings and making dinner for a man who had invented a dead woman to explain where the rest of his life went. She was trusting him. Completely. With her children, with her time, with the whole shape of her future. The anger Imani had been carrying, Controlled, banked low, useful, did something strange in that moment. It didn't disappear, it didn't soften, but it shifted sideways, making room for something else. Something heavier and sadder and harder to name. Not quite pity, closer to recognition. She didn't know either. Yolanda Pierce had not stolen anything from Imani. She had been handed a story, the same way Imani had been handed a story, and she had believed it, because that is what people do when someone they love looks them in the eye and speaks with confidence. Yolanda was not a villain in this. She was a woman raising 2 children alone 4 days out of every week, waiting for a man who was somewhere else, being someone else entirely. She was collateral damage, the same as Imani, just on the other side of the same lie. Imani closed the laptop. She pressed both hands flat on the table and held them there, steady, feeling the cool, solid wood beneath her palms. Then she picked up her phone and called Gregory. He answered on the second ring. "I read it," she said. "I know." He waited. "Yolanda doesn't know I exist. She thinks I'm dead." She said it plainly, no tremor in it. He told her I died. A pause. "Yes." "She's not involved in any of this. She's not protecting him." Imani's voice was even. "She's just another person he managed." "That's my read," Gregory said carefully. "Then she's not who I need to focus on." Imani looked across the dark kitchen. "Gregory, I need to know who has been covering for him. Someone has. This doesn't hold together for 11 years without help." Magnolia Terrace Retirement Community sat at the end of a long, flat road lined with crepe myrtles. The trees were blooming, pale pink, almost white, dropping petals across the sidewalk in slow, lazy drifts. The kind of place that had been designed to feel peaceful. Manicured hedges, a fountain near the entrance that trickled softly. Benches arranged in pairs beneath the shade. Imani drove through the gate on a Tuesday afternoon and parked without calling ahead. She had dressed carefully, not formally, a clean blouse, pressed slacks, small gold earrings, but put together in the way that made people underestimate how closely she was watching. She had done that her whole career. Show up looking poised, let the other person relax. She signed in at the front desk as Imani Carter, listed her relationship as daughter-in-law, and asked for Patrice Carter's unit number. The young man at the desk didn't blink. He wrote it on a yellow sticky note and told her Building C, 3rd door on the left past the common room. She found it without trouble. She knocked twice. The woman who opened the door was not what Imani had expected. She had built Patrice Carter in her mind from years of secondhand information. Damon's brief, vague descriptions, the image of a private and frail older woman who preferred her own company, who had never quite warmed to the woman her son married. Imani had imagined something small and distant and cold. Patrice Carter was none of those things. She was tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a pressed floral blouse and reading glasses pushed up into silver-streaked hair. She had Damon's same square jaw, the same way of holding her chin slightly forward. She looked like a woman who was used to being the smartest person in a room and knew it. And the moment she saw Imani standing in her doorway, her whole face changed. It was fast, a flicker. But Imani caught it, that brief, involuntary tightening around the eyes, the almost imperceptible pull of a woman trying to rearrange her expression before the other person noticed. Imani noticed. "Imani," Patrice said. The warmth in her voice arrived a half-second too late. "Goodness, what a surprise." "I was in the area," Imani said and smiled. "I've been meaning to visit for years. Damon talks about you so much. I figured it was past time." Patrice's unit was tidy and overfull. Framed photographs lined the walls. Damon at various ages, graduation pictures, holiday shots. Family portraits that Imani scanned quickly as she settled onto the floral sofa. She filed each image away. She would look closer if she needed to. Patrice made tea she didn't offer, and sat across from Imani in the high-backed chair nearest the door, her hands folded in her lap. calm on the surface, careful underneath. They talked about small things first: Imani's drive down, the weather, a neighbor in Building C who played piano badly and too loudly. Patrice laughed at the right moments. She was good at this. Practiced. Imani let her breathe. Then, gently, she steered. "I always think about Damon's spring trips," Imani said, her voice light and easy, turning her tea mug in both hands. "He's so devoted to you. Every single year. I always thought it was sweet, the way he makes that time no matter what's going on with work." Something moved behind Patrice's eyes, quick, like a fish turning beneath still water. "He's a good son," she said. "He really is." Imani tilted her head. "He comes alone, of course. He always said you preferred quiet, that you weren't one for a crowd." She paused. "I always respected that." Patrice picked up her tea and took a slow sip. "How long is he usually here?" Imani asked, genuinely curious sounding, the voice of a trusting wife making harmless conversation. A beat too long passed. We visit," Patrice said. "It varies." "Of course." Imani set down her mug. "I just always wondered where he stays. He mentioned a hotel nearby, but I could never find one close enough to make sense." Patrice's jaw tightened. The room went very quiet. Imani watched her mother-in-law, this woman she had never met, this woman she had spent 8 years feeling unworthy of, watched her sit with the silence and try to find a way through it. Watched her weigh her options the way someone did when they realized, too late, that the conversation they were in was not the one they'd thought they were having. When Patrice finally spoke, her voice was lower. Some of the warmth had gone out of it. "Imani." A pause. "How much do you know?" "Enough," Imani said simply. Patrice looked at her hands. For a long moment she said nothing. Then she set down her tea with a small, deliberate click and looked up. "Yolanda's a good woman," she said. "And those children, Mason and Aaliyah, they needed a father who showed up." The name landed like a stone, dropped into still water. Imani did not move. "I've known since the beginning," Patrice continued, quieter now, as though the words cost her something to release. "I'm the one who calls him every March, to remind him to go." She looked away. "I've watched those babies myself, 3 times at least." Gregory's office smelled like old paper and coffee. It always had. The kind of smell that said, work gets done here. Real work. Careful work. Imani had been in this office twice before, both times for happy reasons, reviewing a vendor contract for her business, then a lease renewal. She had sat in this same chair across from his wide oak desk and felt comfortable. Safe. She didn't feel safe now. But she felt ready. She laid everything on the desk in order, the photographs from the suburban house, the property records Gregory had already pulled, the investigator's notes on Yolanda. Then she folded her hands and told him about Patrice. All of it, word by word, the way Patrice had said, "I'm the one who calls him every March," like it was almost something to be proud of. Gregory listened without interrupting. He had a yellow legal pad on the desk and a pen in his hand, but he barely wrote anything. He just listened, his eyes steady on her face, his expression giving nothing away. When she finished, the room was quiet for a moment. "Okay," he said. Just that. Then he pulled his keyboard closer. The financial records took him less time than Imani expected. Gregory had already submitted requests through his investigator, a quiet, thorough woman named Carol, who Imani had never met, but had come to trust from the precision of her reports. While Imani had been sitting across from Patrice in that floral sofa living room, Carol had been pulling expense account logs and cross-referencing bank transfers. Gregory turned his monitor so Imani could see the screen. "Look at this column," he said, tapping a row of figures. "These are charges filed against Damon's regional expense account, filed as business travel. Hotels, meals, mileage reimbursements." He scrolled down slowly. "Over 4 years, he's filed more than $60,000 in expenses for trips that don't correspond to any regional sales territory his company operates in." Imani stared at the numbers. "And this," Gregory said, pulling up a second document, "joint account. Transfers to a holding account. Small amounts, irregular intervals. $40 here, $200 there. Nothing large enough to flag automatically." He looked at her. "But consistent. Over 8 years, it adds up to just over $31,000. $31,000. She had signed the same joint tax returns as that account for 8 years. She had reviewed their household budget every January, careful and thorough, proud of how well they managed. She had never once seen it. "He was careful," Gregory said, "but not careful enough." "He thought I wouldn't look," Imani said. Gregory didn't answer. He didn't need to. He printed everything in 2 organized sets, one for her files, one for his. He paper-clipped each set neatly and slid hers across the desk in a plain manila envelope. Then he leaned back in his chair and looked at her with the calm, measured expression she had come to rely on. "Before anything else happens," he said, "we need to protect what's yours. Your business accounts need to be separated from anything jointly held. Your personal assets need to be clearly documented." He paused. "If Damon gets even a hint that something's coming, he will move money. Fast. Men like this always do." "How long will it take?" "I can have the asset documentation done by the end of the week. Divorce filing is ready to go whenever you give the word." He tapped the legal pad. "I drafted the initial paperwork 2 days ago." Imani looked at the envelope in her hands. Thin, ordinary-looking. Everything inside it was anything but. "I want to be the one to serve him," she said. "You will be," Gregory said. She sat quietly for a moment, thinking. Not about the numbers. Those had already settled into the cold, organized part of her mind where she kept things she needed but didn't want to feel yet. She was thinking about the shape of what came next, the logistics, the sequence. She was, after all, an event planner. "Patrice has a birthday coming up," Imani said. She mentioned it herself. "She's already planning a small gathering. Family only," she said. "A dinner." Gregory waited. "Damon will be there. She told me he always comes. She made a point of it, actually." Imani set the envelope on the edge of the desk. "I want to use it. That dinner. That room." "You want to bring Yolanda," Gregory said. "Yolanda deserves to know the truth." Imani's voice was even. "She's been living inside the same lie I have. She has a right to hear it the same way I did, in full. From the evidence, not from a phone call, not from a stranger's letter." She looked at Gregory directly. She should be there when he has nowhere left to go. Gregory studied her for a moment. Then he nodded slowly. "I'll need to know the date," he said, "and I'll need you to be sure. Once everyone is in that room, it moves fast." "I know," Imani said. She picked up the envelope and placed it carefully into her bag. "I've been patient for 8 years," she said. "I can plan a dinner." Patrice's house smelled like candles and sweet potato pie. Warm light spilled through the front windows. A paper birthday banner hung crooked above the mantel. Somebody had put soft music on low, something old, something gentle. The kind of music that made a room feel like nothing bad could happen in it. Imani arrived early. She had planned it that way. She wore a simple black dress and low heels. Her hair was pulled back. She had a black tote bag over one shoulder that held a manila envelope, a rubber-banded stack of documents, and 8 photographs printed on clean, white paper. She set her bag down by the armchair nearest the center of the room and helped Patrice carry glasses from the kitchen without being asked. Patrice kept glancing at her. Imani smiled back every time. Calm, pleasant, patient. Damon arrived at 6:30. He came through the front door with his coat over one arm and a box of chocolates for his mother under the other. He was smiling, that wide, easy smile that Imani had believed completely for 8 years. He kissed Patrice on the cheek. He crossed the room toward Imani with his arms open. "Hey, baby." He kissed her temple. "You look beautiful." "Thank you," she said. She let him hold her hand. She smiled up at him. She felt nothing except focus. He was already working the room, talking to Patrice's neighbor, laughing at something, completely at ease. He did not know yet. She could see it in every relaxed line of his body. She checked her phone. 7 minutes. The doorbell rang at 6:43. Damon was mid-sentence with Patrice's neighbor when he heard the knock. He didn't look up at first. Then Patrice opened the front door, and Damon went completely still. Yolanda Pierce stood in the doorway in a cream-colored coat, her hands folded around the strap of her purse. She looked uncertain, a little nervous. She had received a card in the mail 2 weeks earlier. "You are family, and you should be here for this," with Patrice's address and the date written neatly inside. No return name. She had told herself it came from someone who cared about making things right. She stepped inside. Damon's face drained. Imani watched it happen from across the room. She watched him look at Yolanda, then at Imani, then at the door, calculating, panicking, running out of road so fast she could almost see it. His mouth opened slightly, closed again. For just one moment, 8 years of practiced calm gave way to something raw and ugly underneath. Then he tried to recover. He actually tried. "What?" He turned toward Patrice. "What is she doing here?" Patrice said nothing. She had gone stiff near the door, her hands clasped together, her eyes on the floor. "Damon?" Imani's voice was quiet, clear. It cut through the music like a key sliding into a lock. He turned to look at her. "Sit down," she said. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't have to. She reached into her tote bag and pulled out the documents. She set them on the coffee table in the center of the room. The photographs first, face up. The property records next. Then the financial documents, organized by year, paper-clipped in neat sections. Yolanda hadn't moved from near the door. She was watching Imani with wide, confused eyes, her purse still clutched in both hands. Damon took a step forward. "Imani, I'm not finished." She didn't look at him. She picked up the first photograph and held it where the room could see. The suburban house, the swing set, Damon's car in the driveway. "This house," she said, "has been in my husband's name for 11 years. He purchased it the same spring he started telling me he went to visit his mother alone." She set it down and picked up the next one. Damon on the porch, Yolanda at the door, his face turned just enough to be unmistakable. He filed over $60,000 in fake business travel expenses to fund that household. He transferred an additional $31,000 out of our joint account, in amounts small enough that they never triggered a flag. She laid the financial pages down in a clean row. "I have all of it documented. My attorney has copies." The room was silent. Patrice's neighbor had gone completely still near the window. Patrice herself had not looked up once. Imani turned to Yolanda then. Her voice stayed level, steady, not cruel, just true. "He told you his ex-wife died," she said. Yolanda's face changed. Something in it broke open quietly, the way ice cracks before it falls. Not all at once, but inevitable from the moment the pressure starts. "I'm not dead," Imani said. "I'm his wife. I have been for 8 years. Yolanda pressed one hand over her mouth. Damon spun toward the room with his arms out, voice rising. She is taking things completely out of context, okay? These documents, you don't understand what you're looking at." Nobody moved toward him. Nobody spoke. He looked at his mother. She stared at the floor. He looked at Patrice's neighbor, who looked away. He looked back at the table, at the photographs, at his own face printed in clean black and white, undeniable and still. The divorce papers were served on a Tuesday. Damon was at his desk at work, his glass-walled office on the 4th floor of a downtown high-rise, when a process server walked in past his assistant and placed the envelope in front of him. Flat, clean, official. His assistant stood in the doorway and didn't say anything. Damon stared at the envelope for a long moment. Then he picked it up. Inside, 43 pages filed 3 weeks earlier. His name on the top line. Imani's name on the line beneath it. Every account, every transfer, every fake expense report itemized with dates, amounts, and the receiving account number, the one attached to Yolanda's household. There was a sticky note on the first page in Gregory's handwriting. Copies have been retained. Respond within the statutory window. Damon put the papers back in the envelope. He set it on the corner of his desk. He straightened his tie. Then he picked up his phone and called Imani. She didn't answer. He called again. Still nothing. He sat back in his chair and looked out through the glass wall at the open office floor, at people moving past their cubicles, at the ordinary Tuesday afternoon continuing without him. And for the first time in 11 years, Damon Carter had no story to tell that anyone was waiting to hear. He called her 4 more times that week. On Thursday evening, she picked up. Imani. His voice was low, controlled, still reaching for that old warmth that had always worked before. Baby, I need you to hear me out. What happened at my mother's, that wasn't. You didn't let me explain. There are no explanations left, Damon. Her voice was quiet, calm, the same tone she had used when she told him to sit down. My attorney will handle everything from here. Please don't call this number again. She hung up. He called back immediately. The line rang once, then went to voicemail. Then again, voicemail. She had sent him directly to it. He sat in his car, in his own driveway. A house that no longer felt like his because it was no longer his, and did not go inside for a long time. The call from his employer came the following Monday morning. It was HR, and then it was legal, and then it was both at once, in a conference room with a printed packet of documents that matched the ones Imani had laid on that coffee table. Because they did match. Because Gregory's investigator had sent an anonymous, verified summary to Damon's company compliance line 8 days earlier. $62,000 in falsified travel expense reimbursements spanning 6 years. Flagged receipts, fabricated hotel stays in cities he had never visited on company business, the real destinations documented alongside them. The regional sales director position was suspended pending investigation, effective immediately. Security walked him to his car, not loudly, not publicly, just firmly, calmly, and without apology. He sat in the parking garage for 20 minutes before he started the engine. In Patrice's retirement community, things moved differently. Quieter, slower, but just as certain. Word spread the way it always does in small, close spaces, first in whispers, then in the deliberate pauses of polite conversation. Patrice's neighbor, the one who had stood near the window at the birthday gathering and gone so still, had told 2 people what she witnessed that afternoon. Those 2 people told others. Within 10 days, Patrice Carter's Wednesday card game had 3 empty chairs where there used to be full ones. The woman who ran the community's welcome committee asked Patrice, gently, to step back from her volunteer position for the time being. Nobody said it directly. Nobody had to. Patrice had spent 8 years letting another woman absorb the quiet shame of being unwelcome in her own family. The community had simply returned the gesture. Yolanda's call came on a Wednesday night. Not to Imani. To Damon. He answered on the first ring, relief flooding through him at the sight of her name on his screen. He hadn't spoken to her since Patrice's house. He had tried, twice. She had not picked up. Yolanda, he exhaled. I have been trying. Don't. Her voice was flat. It barely sounded like her. I'm not calling to talk. I'm calling to tell you one thing. He waited. You are not to come here. Her voice cracked once, then steadied. Not to this house, not to Mason's school, not to Aaliyah's recital. I have an attorney. Until there is a legal arrangement in place that I agree to, you don't come near my children. Yolanda, they're my kids. You told me their mother was dead. The words came out slow and deliberate, each one landing like a stone. You sat in this house at my dinner table, and you let me grieve a woman who was alive. Don't tell me what you have a right to." She ended the call. Damon set the phone down on the passenger seat. He was parked outside a hotel, a different one from the one on the receipt, a cheaper one, because there was nowhere else to go. Not the house with the swing set, not the home on Alderman Drive, not his mother's community, where he was no longer welcome at the door. Every room he had built for himself had closed at once. He sat in the quiet of the parking lot and stared at nothing. A year has a way of quietly rearranging things. Not all at once, not with fanfare, just steadily, the way water reshapes stone, one decision at a time, one morning at a time, until the person standing in the kitchen making coffee barely resembles the woman who once sat frozen in a parking lot, staring at photographs on a burner phone. Imani's alarm went off at 6:15. She silenced it before the second buzz. The apartment in Raleigh was new. Clean lines, tall windows, morning light that came in gold and warm across the hardwood floors. It was hers. Not joined, not shared. Not carrying the weight of someone else's secret life pressed into the walls. Just hers, signed and furnished on her own terms. A home base for the second office she had opened 4 months ago in a city that didn't carry a single memory she needed to manage. She dressed quickly. A deep green blazer, gold earrings, comfortable shoes because Tuesdays meant site visits. Her phone buzzed on the counter. Dana. "You better eat something before that walkthrough. I know you. You'll skip breakfast and then be mean to me by noon." Imani smiled and typed back, "I had a protein bar." "That's not food, Imani. See you at 10. She pocketed the phone and picked up her coffee. The event planning firm was called Elevated now. It had been Carter Events for 6 years. She had changed the name in October, quietly, without ceremony. Updated the website, replaced the signage, had new business cards printed on thick cream stock. The rebrand had cost her 3 weeks and a modest design fee. It had felt like setting down something very heavy. The Raleigh office occupied the second floor of a converted warehouse near downtown, exposed brick and oversized windows and a long conference table that seated 12. She had hired 2 junior planners and a part-time coordinator to manage the new territory. Good people, focused, creative, not impressed by noise. Dana ran the original location back home. She had taken on the operations manager title with a kind of quiet competence that made Imani wonder why she hadn't offered it years earlier. Business was good, better than good. 3 corporate contracts signed in the first quarter alone, plus a wedding season that was already booked past September. She was not chasing anything. She was not shrinking to fit anyone's idea of what she should be. The work simply reflected who she had always been, now that nothing was in the way of it. She was walking back from lunch, a real one, not a protein bar she had conceded to Dana on that point, when she saw him. It was a Tuesday in April, warm enough for shirt sleeves, thin enough for a jacket. She was on the main commercial strip near her old office, back in her home city for a client meeting she'd scheduled over the 2-day trip. Damon was standing outside a mid-tier restaurant about half a block ahead of her, talking to a man she didn't recognize. He wore a suit that used to fit him better. His shoulders carried a kind of effort now, like standing straight required a decision. He was smiling the way she remembered, easy, practiced, the smile that used to make a room feel warmer. But the man he was talking to kept checking his phone. Nobody was buying it. Damon turned slightly and she saw his face in profile. Thinner. Older in the way that had nothing to do with years. The regional sales director polish was gone, replaced by something that was trying hard to look like it wasn't trying. He hadn't seen her. She kept walking. Not because she was avoiding him, not because she felt anything that needed protecting. She simply had somewhere to be, and he was not a detour worth taking. She passed within 20 feet of him and felt nothing dramatic, no spike of anger, no satisfaction that needed feeding, just the calm, flat recognition of someone who no longer had any access to her life. She kept her pace steady, her coffee cup in her right hand, her portfolio bag over her left shoulder. She did not look back. The office was quiet when she returned. Her junior planner had left a printed confirmation on her desk along with a sticky note. New client called to confirm. Deposit cleared. Details in your inbox. Imani sat down, pulled up her laptop, found the email. A corporate anniversary gala, 200 guests, venue already secured, timeline flexible. Clean brief, good budget, real work. She typed a short reply confirming receipt and next steps, then closed out of her email. She reached over and shut her laptop. Outside the tall windows, the afternoon light had shifted, softer now, leaning toward evening, the kind of light that made the brick walls of the building across the street glow amber and warm. She sat with it for a moment, not thinking about anything in particular, not measuring herself against anything, not wondering if she was enough or too much, or falling short of some invisible standard someone else had invented to keep her small. Just sitting in her own office, in her own city, running her own company. Content. Completely, quietly, entirely in control. Thank you for watching until the end. If this story meant something to you, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. I've got 2 stories on the screen that you have to watch next. Have a great day!